Welcome. We are embarking on an in-depth examination of the complex life and really astonishing career of Paul Reubens.
hmm
The show is designed to give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed about the man who gave the world one of its most memorable and, I think, enduring creations, Pee Wee Herman.
And our mission today is to follow a remarkable and, often very difficult trajectory.
Right.
We're tracking his journey from a childhood that was influenced by both heroic military history and the spectacle of the circus, all the way through the cultural high point of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
And then, of course, the public and professional devastation of his legal crises.
Exactly. And finally, his quiet, intensely private final years. It's a story that's fundamentally about artistic commitment, the burden of a persona, and profound secrecy.
That tension you mentioned between the intensely private man and the relentlessly public, almost childlike character, that is what makes the story so fascinating.
Absolutely.
So let's start right at the beginning. Paul Reubens was born Paul Rubenfeld in Peekskill, New York in 1952. He grew up in a Jewish family.
But when you look at the source material concerning his parents, Judy and Milton, you immediately see why his formative years were anything but typical.
Well, the background of his father, Milton Rubenfeld, is genuinely movie-worthy.
It really is.
It provides such a powerful counterpoint to the image we have of his son. While Milton later worked as an automobile salesperson, his history was one of incredible global conflict and, really, heroism.
He was a highly decorated pilot.
A highly decorated pilot during World War II, flying first for Britain's Royal Air Force
The RAF, yeah.
and then for the U.S. Army Air Forces. So this was a man with deep, serious combat experience.
And the sources really emphasized that his service didn't end there. After the war, Milton played a crucial, almost clandestine role in the founding of the State of Israel.
Precisely. Milton Rubenfeld was one of the founding pilots of the Israeli Air Force during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War.
That is just, it's hard to wrap your head around that. Think about that for a moment. He was one of only 5 Jewish pilots. They're often described as being volunteers. And they were flying smuggled fighter planes.
Smuggled planes.
Yeah, they were going up against significantly larger Arab air forces during that foundational conflict. It's an almost unbelievably intense, high-stakes, and deeply consequential background for the father of a beloved children's comedian.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the level of drama and maybe the necessary secrecy that permeated his family environment. Then, when Paul was 9, the family moves to Sarasota, Florida. And that's when the performing bug truly took hold, mixing that high-drama family history with pure spectacle.
Sarasota was incredibly influential. I mean, you can't overstate it. Because it served as the winter headquarters for the Ringling Bros and Barnum and Bailey Circus.
So he was just surrounded by it.
Constantly. Reubens was exposed to the world of performance, the visual artifice, the sheer joy of the big top. And you can see that influence so clearly in the set design and the characters of the Playhouse. But it wasn't just the circus. Reubens himself was, obsessed with the precision of comedy. He would devour reruns of I Love Lucy and just aspired to generate laughter with that same level of commitment.
So his origin story is this collision of secret wartime heroism, the flamboyance of the circus, and the timing of classic sitcoms.
It's a perfect psychological storm.
It really is. A perfect storm for a character who would eventually blend innocence, mischief, and this highly stylized art direction. And his focus on performance was immediate.
Absolutely. He was deep into theater in high school, even serving as president of the National Thespian Society.
Okay.
He attended Boston University briefly, but the real shaping of his creative identity, that happened at the California Institute of the Arts, CalArts. He graduated with a BFA in theater in 1973.
And CalArts in the 1970s was a powerhouse of artistic exploration, wasn't it? I think the New Yorker famously described Reubens as the wildest of a wild bunch within that experimental environment.
And the list of his peers there really confirms the creative density. It was just an incredible time to be there. He was classmates with Katie Segal.
Who called him her fantastically colorful best buddy.
A great description. And David Hasselhoff, who was even his roommate for a time.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Well, Segal's recollection of his dorm room is key because it shows the Pee Wee aesthetic was already brewing.
Right.
While others had, standard student decor, she recalled Reubens' room was uniquely decorated. It was a fully formed environment. She described it as being like a real-life Pee-wee's Playhouse.
So the commitment to that immersive, stylized world was always his instinct.
Always.
That focus on visual environment naturally led him to the world of improvisational comedy. After CalArts, he joins the Groundlings in Los Angeles in the 70s, and he honed his skills there for 6 years alongside figures like Phil Hartman and John Paragon.
The Groundlings era was the petri dish for Pee Wee Herman. It's where it all came together. The character didn't just arrive fully formed, He emerged from a 1978 improv exercise.
And the prompt for that exercise was so simple.
Profoundly simple. A man who wished to be a stand-up comedian but failed so spectacularly at telling jokes that his attempts became hilariously inept. That idea of joyful failure was the core.
And then came the assembly of the iconic name and voice, which are themselves these little fragments of his own history.
That's right. The first name, Pee Wee, was plucked from a 1-inch Pee Wee brand harmonica he owned as a child, a small, childlike artifact.
Okay.
The surname, Herman, came from an energetic boy he remembered knowing during his youth. And that voice, that highly recognizable, slightly manic, high-pitched voice.
The lilt, yeah.
The lilt that defined the character. That was actually something he had developed much earlier, back in 1970, for an obnoxious character in a production of Life with Father.
So the character was built layer by layer from these nostalgic personal artifacts. Now, before he fully committed to Pee-wee, our sources remind us that Reubens had a brief and deeply regretted detour into a very different and problematic persona.
This is a crucial detail for understanding his early struggle to find his voice. He had this pre-Pee-wee attempt at stardom on The Gong Show, performing as a Native American lounge singer character named Jay Longco.
It's hard to even picture.
It included wearing a feathered headdress and a sequined loincloth. I mean, it was not good.
Right.
In the 2025 documentary Pee-wee as Himself, Reubens was very frank about this early choice. He admitted he was full-on racist, and he expressed profound relief and gratitude that the success of Pee Wee Herman provided him a path to abandon Jay Longco entirely.
So he saw Pee-wee as a genuine escape hatch.
An escape hatch from a career choice he later found shameful.
That sense of creative redemption through Pee-wee, it brings us to the next massive inflection point, the infamous Saturday Night Live audition that he failed, which, ironically, became the genesis of his success.
The timing was 1980. Reubens was auditioning for the 1980-1981 SNL season on the very same day as Gilbert Gottfried.
And Reubens developed this theory about his rejection.
A very specific theory. He believed that because he and Gottfried were perceived as, the same type of performer, that the hiring was rigged. The rejection felt arbitrary and very personal to him.
And that bitterness, that feeling of being unjustly overlooked, it just fueled this powerful reaction that defined the next decade of his life.
It was pure, highly productive, creative spite.
A great way to put it.
He channeled all that frustration into building his own platform. He borrowed money to create a stage show entirely dedicated to Pee Wee Herman.
The logic being, if the establishment wouldn't hire him,
he would create a phenomenon too large for them to ignore.
And that self-financed show, the Pee Wee Herman Show, debuted in 1981 at the Roxy Theater in L.A.
And it was an immediate cultural hit. It ran for 5 sellout months, initially, as these midnight shows aimed at adults.
Right.
And it very soon gained distribution on HBO's On Location.
And the theatrical success demanded this impossible level of artistic commitment.
Oh, completely. For the next decade, Reubens made the deliberate decision to maintain complete secrecy about his true identity. He lived, he breathed, he conducted all public appearances and interviews entirely in character.
To what end? What was the goal?
His goal was, and this is a quote, to get the public to think that was a real person. The man, Paul Reubens, just vanished behind the bow tie.
We hear stories of actors maintaining character on set, but a commitment to this level for 10 years across all public interactions, that's almost unheard of in modern show business.
It is. It completely blurred the lines for the public.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the lengths he would go to protect the fantasy and the innocence of the character.
His preference was so strong that he even asked his own parents to be referred to in public as Honey Herman and Herman Herman.
That's right. Everything had to support the illusion that Pee Wee Herman was a real, singular entity, not a man named Paul Reubens.
That powerful stage presence, it paved the way for the big screen. When Warner Bros. Came calling, they initially asked him to develop a film script. And we know his first idea was radically different from what we ended up seeing.
It was so different. Reubens initially planned a feature film remake of Pollyanna.
Pollyanna.
His favorite film. The original concept was rooted in a very traditional, sentimental kind of American storytelling.
But something shifted his focus entirely, turning the project into Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985.
He was actually writing the Pollyanna script when he began noticing that many employees walking around the Warner Bros. Lot were utilizing bicycles.
Just a simple observation.
A simple, common observation.
Yeah.
But that visual presence sparked the idea to completely pivot the plot. He just abandoned the remake and instead focused the entire narrative on the epic search for a stolen bike,
And that became the basis for Big Adventure.
which he co-wrote with Phil Hartman.
The next creative decision was arguably the most important for the film's aesthetic, the choice of director. And Reubens was not willing to compromise on his baby.
No, he fought fiercely for creative control. Warner Bros. Proposed a director that Reubens immediately rejected. So he took inspiration from Sylvester Stallone, who had maintained control over Rocky.
Right.
And he insisted on selecting his own director. The studio gave him a tight deadline: find someone approvable, available, and affordable within a week.
And Reubens found Tim Burton, who was virtually unknown at the time. He'd only directed the short Frankenweenie. What was it about Burton that immediately clicked?
Reubens saw something very specific that validated his own artistic vision. He screamed Frankenweenie, and he recalled specifically, I was looking at the wallpaper in this bedroom and the lighting and just going, this is the guy who has style and understands art direction.
So it was all about the visuals.
For Reubens, the visual language and the art direction were just as important as the plot. Burton was the perfect match, bringing that blend of gothic whimsy and unique visual style that defined the film.
And the risk paid off spectacularly. Pee-wee's Big Adventure was a hit.
A huge hit. It grossed $40.9 million domestically on a modest $7 million budget, and it quickly established itself as a massive cult classic, even despite some initial mixed critical reception.
And that success then led directly to his lasting television legacy.
CBS immediately wanted to capitalize on the character. Their initial proposal was a straightforward cartoon.
But Reubens resisted that.
He did. He insisted on a live-action children's program that retained the art house aesthetic of his stage show. The result, of course, was Pee-wee's Playhouse, which ran from 1986 to 1990.
The genius of the Playhouse was really its dual audience appeal. It was explicitly designed for children, but it was constantly winking at the adults in the room.
That was the core design philosophy. Reubens wanted it to be simultaneously educational, highly entertaining, and genuinely artistic for children. But he deliberately layered in enough avant-garde style, ironic humor, and visual hipness to captivate an adult audience as well. He insisted on high production values.
And he was given an incredible amount of freedom by CBS for a children's show.
An enormous amount. He reportedly received $325,000 per episode, which is just unheard of for that genre at the time.
Wow.
And, maybe more importantly, virtually no creative interference. The show became an incubator for talent. The cast included future stars like Lawrence Fishburne and S. Epatha Merkerson.
Right.
Even the music was noteworthy. Cyndi Lauper sang the opening credits under the pseudonym Ellen Shaw.
But beneath all the chaos and the color, he maintained a really rigid moral compass for the show.
That was truly vital to him. Reubens consciously infused the show with a moral vision. He was teaching foundational ideas like the Golden Rule, promoting kindness. He believed the show resonated because it never talked down to them. It relied instead on fast pacing, bold color, and treating children with intellectual respect.
And the results speak for themselves, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Playhouse garnered 22 Emmy nominations and 15 wins during its run. Reubens eventually pulled the plug after 5 seasons. He declined a 6th because of burnout, saying he needed a sabbatical and wanted to develop other ideas.
Even while he was fully immersed in the character, he was using alternate names for smaller roles to protect the illusion that Pee Wee Herman was separate from Paul Reubens.
The commitment was absolute. He voiced the computer Max in the film Flight of the Navigator, but he insisted on being credited as Paul Mall.
Paul Mall?
Yeah. And for the burgeoning Star Wars universe, he was the original voice of the eccentric pilot droid RX-24, Captain Rex, in the initial Star Tours attraction at Disneyland, starting in 1987.
It just demonstrates the almost military-level operational security he maintained around the character's persona.
It really does.
That extreme commitment to the illusion is what made the crisis of July 1991 so devastating. The entire edifice Paul Reubens had spent a decade building. It came crashing down following his arrest in Sarasota, Florida.
The arrest occurred during a surprise police inspection at an adult movie theater. Reubens was charged with indecent exposure.
Hmm.
And the immediate aftermath of that arrest showcases the profound commitment, and you could say the potential delusion of the persona he wore.
When he was detained, he identified himself not as Paul Rubenfeld,
Yeah.
but as Pee Wee Herman.
Yes. And he immediately tried to manage the catastrophe. He offered to perform a children's benefit for the sheriff's office if they would simply agree to stop the story from leaking.
He made a similar offer to the local newspaper, too.
He did. He genuinely believed the power of the character could make the entire event vanish.
This arrest, however, was his third interaction with law enforcement in that county, though the others were much more minor.
That's correct. He had a loitering and prowling charge in 1971 that was dropped, and a 1983 marijuana possession charge that resulted in probation.
But the 1991 arrest, just due to the magnitude of the Pee Wee Herman character, it was an immediate national explosion. The fallout from corporate partners was instant, and it was severe. The business world just ran in fear of the negative association.
The reaction was a classic example of cultural panic. Disney MGM Studios suspended distribution of a Pee Wee video. Toys R Us swiftly pulled all Pee Wee merchandise from their shelves.
And CBS.
CBS, without hesitation, canceled the remaining reruns of Pee Wee's Playhouse. The national media coverage and the relentless late-night talk show ridicule they were relentless and punishing.
Yet, amidst this massive corporate and media shaming, the public and his peers rallied around him in a surprisingly strong show of support.
This is a crucial detail to remember. The public was fiercely defensive of Pee Wee. High-profile figures like Cyndi Lauper and Annette Funicello offered immediate public support.
And fans organized massive rallies.
In Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, they carried signs in support of the character and the actor. A telephone survey by A Current Affair showed support for Reubens outnumbering those against him by a stunning 9-to-1 ratio.
9-to-1.
Yeah, it was a massive cultural disconnect between corporate fear and fan loyalty.
The legal proceedings concluded pretty quickly, but the career damage was done.
Reubens pleaded no contest in November 1991, which meant he avoided a formal charge on his record. He was ordered to complete 75 hours of community service.
And he did that by producing anti-drug PSAs.
Yes, he produced and financed 2 of them.
But the true measure of Reubens' resilience and the enduring power of the character was his first public reappearance.
That appearance at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards was just an incredible piece of defiance and performance art. Reubens appeared in character, received a massive standing ovation, and delivered one simple, iconic line to address the scandal head-on. He asked, "Heard any good jokes lately?"
It was a moment that simultaneously acknowledged the crisis and reasserted the character's command over the public narrative.
It was brilliant.
Reubens entered a long period of semi-retirement after that, but he was pulled back into the spotlight with an even more complex and damaging legal crisis over a decade later. This period must have caused immense personal stress.
It absolutely did, and it involved much more serious, though eventually unfounded, allegations. The trouble began in November 2002 when police executed a search warrant on his home.
And the tip came from another actor, Jeffrey Jones.
Yes, who was facing unrelated charges at the time.
Yeah.
During the search, police found a vast collection of memorabilia, including grainy videotapes and photographs.
The initial characterization from the city attorney's office was extremely inflammatory. They labeled some of the material as child pornography, which is a charge that carries this massive cultural and legal stigma.
And this is where we need to be extremely clear about the legal nuances, because Reubens fought this accusation tooth and nail. His representative, Kelly Bush, immediately clarified the nature of the items.
Right.
She insisted they were kitsch collectible images and 30 to 100-year-old vintage erotica. For example, some of the tapes cited in the initial search were reportedly things like Rob Lowe's sex videotape, which, while graphic, is not illegal to possess.
So the key distinction was the difference between collecting historical, adult-themed, or vintage homosexual erotica and illegal material.
Precisely. Reubens was insistent that he was an avid collector of vintage erotica, physique magazines, and historical kitsch, much of which was homosexual in nature. But he adamantly maintained that he never collected or possessed material featuring children.
And his art dealer corroborated this?
Yes. During the investigation, the dealer confirmed that Reubens specifically requested vintage materials, but explicitly stated not things featuring kids.
To combat the perception that he was a pedophile, a public accusation far more damaging than the indecency charge a decade earlier, Reubens made a powerful and rare personal statement.
And this statement is so crucial to understanding his state of mind during this period of crisis. He said, "I don't want anyone for 1 second to think that I am titillated by images of children." He continued, "The public may think I'm weird. They may think I'm crazy or anything that anyone wants to think about me. That's all fine, as long as one of the things you're not thinking about me is that I'm a pedophile, because that's not true."
The fear of that specific label was clearly paralyzing. And, we have to show sympathy for the position he was put in, having to defend his entire character against such a damaging insinuation.
Absolutely.
So given the intense scrutiny and the nature of the original charge, what was the eventual legal resolution?
The district attorney ultimately found no grounds for felony charges, which proved that the more serious allegations were unfounded. In 2004, Reubens pleaded guilty to a lesser misdemeanor obscenity charge. This plea required 3 years of registration with the sheriff's office and needing permission to be around minors, but it validated his defense that the material was collectible erotica, not illegal child-related material.
And it's important to note the immense personal adversity he was facing during this 2-year legal battle.
It's a key part of the story. He was simultaneously spending that time caring for his terminally ill father, Milton, in Sarasota, who passed away in February 2004.
The resolution of those 2002 charges really marked a turning point. Paul Reubens started to emerge from the shadow of the persona. He made a deliberate strategic shift to reintroduce himself as Paul Reubens, the actor, independent of Pee Wee Herman.
He started giving interviews as himself, Paul Reubens, around 1999. His first major public appearance at a costume post-arrest was that year on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
And that move was essential for his career to move forward, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. By taking ownership of his true identity, he could finally explore roles that were inherently un-Pee Wee.
And he quickly proved that the talent behind the character was formidable in its own right, earning significant praise in his dramatic and comedic guest roles.
He had a highly successful recurring role as the uptight Andrew J. Lansing III on Murphy Brown from 1995 to 1997.
Right.
It was an award-worthy performance. It earned him his only non-Pee Wee Emmy nomination for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series.
And that validated his ability to shed the bow tie and deliver sophisticated adult comedy.
It really did.
His turn as Derek Foriel in the 2001 drama Blow was a major surprise for many people who only knew him as the childlike Pee Wee.
It was a stark departure. He played a flamboyant hairdresser who transforms into a drug dealer.
Yeah.
The performance earned positive reviews and showed that he could inhabit dark, complex adult roles alongside actors like Johnny Depp.
And he used this newfound freedom to take on surprising guest roles.
Exactly, like Rick on Reno 911 and the role of the inbred Austrian prince Gerhard Habsburg on 30 Rock.
A part that Tina Fey specifically created for him.
Which is a lot. He also played Mr. Vargas in 5 episodes of The Blacklist, demonstrating his utility in serious procedural dramas.
But despite the success as Paul Reubens, the pull of the Playhouse was always strong. The Pee Wee Herman revival truly took off with his return to the stage.
In 2009, he announced the return of the Pee Wee Herman Show. And he clearly articulated his rationale for it. He said he wanted to introduce Pee Wee to the new generation that didn't know about it.
But he was also using the stage run to generate buzz for a future film, wasn't he?
Yes, and to test material. It served a dual purpose.
And the demand was enormous, which really proved the character's enduring cultural capital.
The show was a massive hit in Los Angeles before transferring to Broadway in 2010. The Broadway run sold over $3 million in advance tickets.
Wow.
It showed the character had successfully transcended the crisis of the 90s and 2000s. The show was eventually taped for HBO in 2011. Following this success, the next natural step was a new film,
which led to the Netflix film Pee Wee's Big Holiday in 2016, produced by Judd Apatow.
Reubens co-wrote and starred in the film, which was generally met with positive reception. It showed that he and the character could still deliver that unique blend of wide-eyed innocence and physical comedy, fitting perfectly into the Netflix streaming environment decades after his first film.
What's fascinating and, slightly tragic is that even after this successful revival, he had multiple major Pee Wee projects planned that never materialized before his passing. And this gives us insight into the complex directions he wanted to take the character.
He often spoke about 2 very distinct scripts. The first, which he sometimes called the Pee Wee Herman story, or just Dark Pee Wee, was a profound thematic contradiction to the innocent character we know.
A black comedy about Pee-wee Herman, that sounds highly unusual.
Extremely. In this version, Pee-wee was slated to become a famous big jerk in Hollywood. He'd make mistakes, do everything wrong, and have what Reubens called Valley of the Dolls moments.
So the tone was clearly adult.
Very adult. And Reubens noted that one of the two planned films was actually slated to open with Pee-wee serving time in prison.
Wow.
It was a conscious attempt to explore the darker, more cynical side of fame through the prism of his childlike icon.
That's a powerful statement. It hints at the pressures he must have felt personally. And what about the other, more family-friendly script?
The second script was the planned sequel, Pee-wee's Playhouse, the movie. This was intended to be a family-friendly road trip adventure.
Okay.
For the first time, Pee-wee and all of his Playhouse friends, both the live-action co-stars and the puppets, would leave the house and journey together into a fantasy realm he called Puppetland.
So a completely different vibe.
Totally. He described this concept as being inspired by classic children's fantasy like H.R. Pump stuff and The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
It offered a clean, innocent counterpoint to the dark Pee-wee concept.
Beyond his own creation, Reubens maintained a significant voice acting presence, ensuring his legacy continued in major franchises, notably Star Wars.
His contribution to Star Wars is often overlooked, but it's vital. He originally voiced the pilot droid RX-24 Rex for the 1987 Star Tours attraction.
Right.
He reprised this role for Star Wars Rebels in 2014, and the character was later updated, with Reubens' voice transitioning to DJ R3X for the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge theme park attraction that opened in 2019.
So that tied his early career to the modern Disney canon seamlessly.
It did.
He also embraced other beloved voice roles in animation and video games.
Exactly. He voiced Batmite, the impish superhero fan in Batman, the Brave and the Bold, and he voiced Ivor in Minecraft Story Mode, which was a role he cited as a personal favorite.
And his final performances, both live action and voice, were released posthumously. His final film role was a posthumous appearance as himself in the comedy Quiz Lady in 2023.
And his final voice role was Pat in an episode of Bob's Burgers that same year. The episode was dedicated to his memory. It just highlights that he remained a working and respected actor right up until the very end of his life.
In the years following his death, the release of the 2025 documentary, Pee-wee as Himself, offered the most profound and necessary insight into Paul Reubens' personal life and the true cost of maintaining that Pee-wee Herman facade.
The documentary finally and publicly confirmed that Paul Reubens was gay. He spoke about a relationship he had in the 1970s with a fellow Callard student named Guy Brown.
And he noted that Brown was actually an inspiration for some of Pee-wee's unique mannerisms.
Particularly the energetic, slightly twitchy physical language, yes.
But once Pee-wee became a global phenomenon, Reubens felt immense pressure to erase that part of his identity entirely.
He spoke very candidly about consciously going back in the closet after achieving fame. He cited reasons that were a mix of self-hatred or self-preservation.
He emphasized that he was aggressively pursuing the Pee-wee Herman career.
Right, not the Paul Reubens career. He felt that the immense fame of the childlike asexual character made discussing his own sexuality way more complicated.
It perfectly illustrates the extraordinary sacrifice he made for the sake of the character's perception of innocence and neutrality.
He felt the persona could not coexist with an openly complex, private identity.
And while he was intensely private about his sexuality, he did maintain deeply important platonic bonds.
His bond with actress Debbie Mizar was particularly close. He dated her briefly in 1993, but she remained one of his most trusted confidants. She was someone who helped him recover from the severe depression that followed the 1991 arrest.
And Mizar described their relationship as a profound, inseparable connection.
A love affair that was just cerebral. That's how she put it.
Yeah.
He also worked closely with Lynn Marie Stewart, a co-star from the Playhouse, on extensive charity work, specifically with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where they made character appearances to bring joy to terminally ill children.
Separate from the man, the legacy of Pee-wee Herman has proved culturally massive and surprisingly influential in areas beyond entertainment.
That aesthetic impact is profound. The fashion world embraced the unique look. Pee-wee's tight-fitting Glen plaid suits, the high-water trousers, the high armholes.
They cemented him as an unlikely style icon.
They really did. Designers like Michia Brada and Tom Brown have openly cited the distinctive, slightly cartoonish cut of Pee-wee's suit as an influence on contemporary design.
And his influence on children's entertainment is absolutely undeniable.
Pee-wee's Playhouse fundamentally changed the landscape of children's television. It demonstrated that shows could be fast-paced, visually sophisticated, and highly creative without pandering.
Hmm.
It's explicitly cited as a major source of inspiration by figures like Steve Burns of Blue's Clues and Steven Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Reubens, even when privately fighting the pressures of fame, maintained these strict professional boundaries to protect the character's perceived innocence right up until the end of its television run.
His dedication to the illusion was extraordinary. Paul Reubens was a heavy smoker in his private life, but he was so determined that no child should ever see Pee Wee Herman with a cigarette,
Right.
that he actually hired security personnel specifically to ensure this boundary was never crossed while he was in costume.
And similarly, he refused lucrative endorsement deals for candy bars or other unhealthy foods.
Yes, although we know he once tried to launch a sugar-free cereal called Ralston Purina Pee Wee Chow. It apparently failed a blind taste test.
In his final years, Reubens maintained one last profound act of secrecy, one that kept his struggle entirely private.
He died on July 30th, 2023, at age 70. The medical cause was acute hypoxic respiratory failure, stemming from myelogenous leukemia and metastatic lung cancer.
And the shocking detail here is that he had been diagnosed 6 years earlier.
6 years. And he made a conscious choice not to reveal his illness publicly. He battled the disease in complete privacy, maintaining that characteristic secrecy and control over his public image until his very last breath.
He left a final statement written by himself that served as a posthumous apology to his fans for his silence regarding his illness.
It was a heartbreaking final performance. It revealed the deep love he felt for his audience, even as he was leaving them. He wrote, "Please accept my apology for not going public with what I've been facing the last 6 years. I have always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you."
He was cremated, and his remains were interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
And the documentary charting his life, Pee Wee as himself, went on to win a Primetime Emmy in 2025.
The story of Paul Reubens is ultimately defined by the incredible, near-impossible lengths he went to protect the fantasy of Pee Wee Herman. The decade he spent entirely in character, the profound refusal to reveal his private life or his sexuality for the sake of the career, and the 6 years he battled a terminal illness in total privacy.
Yeah.
The paradox we find in this life is how much Paul Reubens sacrificed his own self for the joy and the artistic vision he brought to the public.
It leaves us with a compelling final thought about the weight of that artistic commitment.
Considering his deep commitment to the character and the immense pressures of maintaining that perpetual fantasy was the ultimate posthumous revelation of Paul Reubens' true identity, both professional and personal, a final necessary act of self-liberation.
A question worth mulling over as you reflect on the unique genius of his life.
Thanks for listening.